I am Holly, and I'm so excited to be back here with you today. I have been married for almost 16 years. I am originally from Missouri, and I have 4 daughters. They are 12, 10, 8, and 6. We homeschool them, and I also teach 2 classes at a local university model high school that is in town. So I always say I love my children and I love teaching them, but being back in the classroom with high schoolers has lit up my soul. They are fantastic to me, and I also love other things that light up my soul include being outdoors and Oreos, if you were wondering. I do want to start off tonight by thanking the Encourage Squad for, I don't know where Maggie is, but for clearly hearing the voice of God and waiting to ask me until after the last 2 months of sex talks. I do feel like I dodged a bullet. But ultimately, my fear that I bring into this evening is that I have indeed not dodged a bullet. What I would love to share with you tonight, ladies, is the journey that I have been on to have margin in my life. And as ladies and mamas and wives, we are busy and we are juggling so much, and there's a cost to trying to do it all, and that is where God has spoken into my heart. Before I share my journey, I'd like to just gather us onto the same page. Some of us in here work full-time, some of us work part-time, some of us work full-time from our homes, some of us have kids, some of us don't. And I know one of the first things that happens to my heart when I'm overcommitted is I start looking at other women's lives and thinking they look so much easier than mine. And so wherever you are in your journey, can we just agree tonight that we're just all busy? It doesn't matter whether we work or don't work or kids. We're just busy people. We're Americans, for crying out loud. So, and there's no judgment here tonight about what makes you busy. Like, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I firmly believe that your life should look different than mine, and that God has to call you to different things, and that He calls me to different things. What I want to talk about tonight is the lesson that I have painfully learned, that actually being less busy is more pleasurable for all parties involved in my home. How many of us were bored at some point this last week? Anyone? Of course not, right? Like, we wake up, we pack lunches, and we get out the door, and we talk on the phone while we're scrubbing our toilet, and we work through lunch, and we go and we have meetings and social events and soccer practice, and then we're living for the weekend when what do? I know what you do. You're at Costco, you're at Target, you're at the soccer field, and you're socializing, and then Sunday night rolls around, and don't we all feel that same, I have to do it again. And we gear up. I know something about this, ladies. In fact, one of the most painful times of my life and in my marriage was spent learning that I actually don't have to have my hand in everything I think I do. That I need boundaries, that I need to rest. Yes. I'm actually still in the process of learning that if God hasn't called me to something, He actually doesn't need me there. And that's big for me. I am type A, and I love people, and I want to be engaged. And if there's a role to be filled, then I want to fill it. And when I was first married, I thrived on being busy. My husband was starting his business, and I had nothing but time. We had just moved to Helena at that time, so I had no friends, right? So how do you make friends? Well, you get involved in stuff. So I got super busy. And then I had a baby. And it wasn't actually very long before I figured out how to be really busy with my baby. And then I had another baby, and then I had another baby. And I was just busy with all these babies. But when I got pregnant with my 4th child, my husband actually calls it not a come to Jesus moment, but a come to Jesus year. And I laugh now, but I really and this is not the picture of our Father, but it is for me in my life. Like, I feel like God had me down with his foot on my throat and was like, how many kids will it take to break you? It's true. He needed me to learn, ladies, that I don't have to have my finger in everything. My kids don't actually have to play every sport they casually mention they might like to try. Right? My home doesn't have to be clean. Dust isn't the enemy. But I just don't have to say yes to everything that I'm offered. But he spoke these unforgettable words to me while I was lying in a hospital bed for 10 days, 7.5 months pregnant with my 4th child, was so heavily medicated for anxiety that I don't remember a single visitor who came to visit me during those days. My husband actually quit coming. Why? Because he was at home with the kids. But he was like, if you're not going to remember it, I'm not going to come anyway. And I had seen it coming, right? I was exhausted. I wasn't sleeping at all. My teeth would chatter at the weirdest times of day. My legs would shake. And I completely checked out from my family. I was meeting their physical needs, but I was not emotionally engaged with them at all. I was just in my fog of doing the next thing. I'm a pretty good coper. Come to find out, that's not a fruit of the Spirit, ladies, okay? So one day, I physically could not get out of bed. I was paralyzed. So in the weeks and the months that followed our hospitalization, I quit everything. Everything. I had no choice. I really couldn't leave my house without my knees shaking uncontrollably. My mother-in-law and my mom took turns flying in for 2 weeks at a time to take care of my children so that I could recover. The world actually went on around me while God leveled me. Instead of being someone for everyone, I was actually no one for anyone. And while it was a great lesson for me, it was hard on my family. One vivid memory that I have before I was hospitalized occurred one afternoon. I know we had eaten peanut butter and crackers in the car for lunch because we were running around, right? We didn't have time to stop. And we got home at 1 o'clock and I rushed up the stairs with my toddler to throw her into her crib for her nap. And she looked at me and she said, "Pay?" And I looked back to her and I said, "Honey, we don't have time to pray. It's nap time." And I shut the door and I walked out and I burst into tears. What had I taught her? I had taught her nothing that I'm proud of, but certainly what I am guilty of. When I am busy and when I am stressed, the very first thing to go is my time with God. I quit listening, I quit praying. Does this story sound familiar? You actually might know the adult version. It's the story of Mary and Martha in the Bible. And if you're unfamiliar with the story, it's in Luke chapter 10. It's a favorite. Every time I read it, well, I do the same things, but the story always ends the same, so I feel like God is like, we'll just keep doing it this way until you learn what I have in there for you. But Jesus is heading to the house of his friends, Mary and Martha. He has brought 12 of his man friends with him, and they are here for rest and relaxation. And Martha is there busy preparing food for these men, right? Mary, her sister, is just sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening to him talk. And Mary complains to Jesus. Mary does not complain to Jesus. Martha complains to Jesus, and she points out that she is busy in the kitchen and Mary is not helping. And I read this story, and at this point I am like, you go, Martha. Okay? Mary is lazy. No one has time to sit. And Jesus always, every time in verse 41, he says, Martha. You are worried about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Oh. Now, I can argue that 13 unexpected men in your home in days when you could not buy packaged bread is a big deal, right? But we don't know what else Martha was struggling with, but here's what we do know. She was so overwhelmed in her life, she found no joy in serving her Savior. None. Martha actually does the exact same thing that I do when I'm overstressed. I lose my joy serving, I turn on my family, and I quit listening to Jesus. If you know me, you know that something I love to do is cook meals for people. And I've been the recipient of so many handmade, loving meals. I know the value of one showing up on your doorstep. I love to cook. I'm cooking for 6 anyways, so it really doesn't matter the number after that. But one way that I immediately can identify that I have overbooked is when I'm mad that I'm making a meal I volunteered to bring to you. Right? I'm frantically mad that it's 8:30 and I'm going to Rose Hours. And now it's 10 and I'm stirring your soup. Right? Here's what I've learned. The problem is not the soup. Right? The problem is that I said yes to too many things I wasn't called to. So my joy, I had nothing to offer what I was called to, right? His call is always to serve one another. So if I stack my day with things that aren't particularly serving or joyful, I have nothing left to joyfully serve you. The highest thing on the list that I am actually called to is to love my family well. And when I am busy, I turn on them. I hate the saying, when mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And I know that there are many in this room who have like all these great theological questions that you're gonna ask God when you get to heaven. But for me, I just want to know what I did to take that responsibility on. I did not ask for that, right? I don't have to like it, but it's true. I set the tone every day in my home. And when I wake up well rested and I spend some time with Jesus and I welcome my kids to the breakfast table, our days roll better. When I have music playing and we have time for a spontaneous dance party, everyone's happier, right? But when I have enough margin that leaving for piano lessons isn't something like, where are your books? What do you mean you can't find your shoes? Get in the car! There's no joy there. None. But we are all more loving and calm when mom is more loving and calm. And I have had to learn to own that. What do I want for my children? Loving and calm. So that means I have to model it for them. And I simply can't do it when I'm overbooked. Other things start to happen. I am mad when I'm folding laundry when I'm busy. Dishes seem to clink louder when I am over busy. And Jared's complete and utter inability to rinse toothpaste down the sink is a landmine that under normal circumstances I can overlook. But I can't when I'm busy. My children love to tell this story. We had a stressful day, and we were selling our house in Helena. And if you've ever tried to sell a house, you know that like the capacity, like you're just here, right? Because your house has to be spotless. And I had 4 children, so my house is not spotless, right? My daughter Chloe was coloring on the floor. She was 5 at the time with a Sharpie, and I didn't know, okay? But I was doing the dishes. And I turn around, and there is blue Sharpie all over the floor. I mean, except for the square, right, where the paper was. I could have just put it right back on there. And ladies, I laid into her in one of the ugliest parenting moments of my life. I treated her as though she looked at the washable markers and thought, nope, going for the Sharpie, not the yellow one, the blue one. And I'm just gonna yell, house don't sell. House don't sell. Right? I had nothing but anger for her. And after the ugly past, I cry every time I tell this story, and she had cried, and I had cried. Guess what I found in the trash? Her picture, ripped in 5 or 6 pieces, Mommy doing the dishes, and underneath it said, Mom, I love you. And seriously, I can't talk about it without crying, because I think, boy, don't you hear Jesus saying, Holly, Holly, you are worried about many things, but only one thing is needed. And for the record, should that happen to you, white toothpaste, like the dollar store Aim or whatever, just rub it on the wood, comes right off. Comes right off. All right? But specifically in my marriage is really where it can get ugly. When I'm overbooked, everything is my husband's fault, right? Like, he forgot the oil change. He always works late. He's the reason the coffee maker clogged. The worst part is that I pull away from him when I'm busy. I tend to get trapped inside my head with my running to-do list. And it was actually he that pointed this out to me a while ago. He came home, and I'm probably stirring your soup, and his arms around me. And what do? I'm just like, I'm gonna go get a utensil, right? Because and he said, am I an interruption to your day? I was like, ooh. Because on one hand, you're like, kinda. And on the other hand, again, don't you hear Jesus? Holly, Holly, this is your husband. The other things that I do is that I will talk incessantly to him about my to-do list, like a verbal processor. This is all I have to do, I have to do this. And then I go put on my ugliest pajamas and I hop into bed and I sleep. Because I want to make sure he knows we are not having sex tonight, right? And it makes me sad. It really does. Because when we're on vacation, we really like each other, right? But we can't live on vacation. But here's what I know about God is that he puts a really high value on my marriage. And if I live in a perpetual state of exhaustion where having sex with him is the last thing I want to do today, oh, ladies, I am a fool to continue down that road. I am a fool. I actually enjoy hanging out with him of an evening when, after the kids are in bed, I can take a bath, or I can read a book by the fire, or just relax. And then it's actually fun and exciting versus a check box, just like folding the laundry was. Like, it's not on the same level, ladies. So I asked myself, why wouldn't I make this my priority, right? And God does. His response to Martha in the story is that only one thing is needed. And that one thing is Jesus. It's him. And we live in a world that will tell you, honey, what you need is more balance. You need more alone time. You need more help. You need more workouts. You need more something. And Jesus is saying, there's just one thing you need. We need less. And I heard someone laugh over here because I always do too. I think a buzzword for our generation is balance, right? And I looked in my Bible, and again, no theologian. I saw no sign of balance. I really didn't. Anytime like 5 different human beings can go to the desert for 40 years. It's not balanced. It's not balanced. So balance implies, though, right, that everything in my life is of equal value. And that's not true. All right? So that in any given day of the week, that I should have equally be able to give to everything I'm balancing in my life. My children, my husband, my job, my home, my charities, my workouts, and on and on. And you kind of get the picture, right? Like, that's crazy. Jen Hatmaker actually has the best quote on balance. She says, balance, it's like a unicorn. We've heard about it. Everyone talks about it. We make airbrushed t-shirts about it, but we haven't actually seen one, right? I'm beginning to think it isn't a thing. And something in the balance competition always gets declared the winner, right? Some days my family is really winning, and then other days my job is winning, and other days maybe caring for my mother is winning, or the grocery store wins, or whatever it is. And so what I tend to do then is just think about, I try to rationalize that whatever it is that I'm winning at is a good thing, right? That I invested wisely. And Martha actually does the same thing, right? Nobody else was cooking. Someone had to cook. And we aren't told how the story ends, but I'm pretty sure Jesus wasn't hungry. Same guy. Remember the 5,000 he fed with the loaves and fish? He's not worried about the food, ladies, right? He was worried about Martha's heart. And he wanted her heart, but she didn't have the capacity to listen. She was so what did she do? She justified that what she was doing was better rather than embracing what Christ had offered her, which was one-on-one, alone, face-to-face time with her Savior, right? Christ doesn't call us to balance. He calls us to Him. And it's about choosing the only one thing that is needed in our lives. And so I like to think if we're still stuck thinking in terms of a scale, then picture what the world wants from us on one side and what Jesus asks of us on the other. And it should be tipped just all in on the Jesus side. Like no balance, out of whack, all in for Christ. And the fun part about that is that's where it's really freeing, ladies. Sometimes He will nudge us to say no. Other times, He nudges us to say yes. He may ask us to sit quietly and just stare out the window to rest our weary souls. Other times, we can walk into busy seasons with confidence and peace that He called us to it. So in our busy season, we can trust we're right where He wants us and that He can cook for Himself, right? That's the beauty of it. It's not that we should all sit around, right? But it's that we should wisely choose what we do so that we can feel confident in it. And this has been the key to prioritizing my life. I still have weeks and months that get out of control. But I am still scarred enough from my hospitalization that I can rein it back pretty fast. My husband catches it even sooner than I do. And I can tell you, I have never been happier. I've had to come to accept that I will always struggle with anxiety. But now I see it as this beautiful gift that God gave me that goes off inside of me to let me know when I'm out of whack, when I'm overextended, and it draws me back to the safe place on earth that He gave me, which is my home and my family, and I can rest there. My nature is to be busy, but God's nature is to be intentional and restful. I drew a line in the sand, and I've often often thought I'd like to just get a t-shirt that says, "I am not Superwoman." I'm out of the game, ladies. I don't want to compete with you. I don't want to compete with anyone anymore. I just kind of want to go about my day, saying yes to the things that God puts in front of me, and happily, joyfully doing them. If something in my life is going to suffer, oh, let it not be my precious husband. Let it not be my children. He calls me to give them my very, very best, and they get the worst of me when I'm overextended. So before I close, I just want to talk about reasons we stay busy, even though we say we don't want to be busy anymore. Has that ever happened? Yeah, I'm so busy and I don't know how to stop, right? So, one, I think sometimes we feel like we're victims of our busyness, right? We don't know how to get off of the mouse wheel, and it's just the way our life is right now, but suddenly right now becomes 2 years and 4, we weren't designed to carry that long. And God very rarely downloads his calendar to me. He's far more spontaneous than I am, but when I have my days packed full, I can't hear him talking to me about what he would like me to do. And so I miss that maybe a friend or a neighbor needs an encouraging note. Maybe my husband needs a text right now telling him that I'm praying for him. I ignore his call to just sit with my daughter and listen to her talk because I'm too busy sending emails or cooking dinner when my daughter just wants my face. So I've had to slow down and invite him into my days, and he never disappoints. That's what I want to share. He never is without something for me to do, and sometimes that is just rest.
Yeah.
Read a book.
Yes.
Exist so that your soul will be restored. One of my favorite verses is Isaiah 30:15, and he gave this to me in my year of finding Jesus. But it says, "In repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength. But you would have none of it." I did not add that sarcasm. That is all God. Is that not fantastic? But you would have none of it. Right? He knows me, ladies. I love this because it's a permission slip to rest. He likens it to our salvation. Like there is nothing greater than our salvation. And he says in quietness and in rest is where we find it. So I think that is our permission slip to do that. Find what restores your soul and make it your priority. He did not design us to be exhausted. I really think it breaks his heart, right? The second reason we don't stop our busyness is that we either don't know our priorities or we're not willing to make the hard choices to make those a reality. Annie Dillard says, "How we spend our days is how we spend our lives." That is so telling. Are we spending our days in a way that we're going to achieve what we said we wanted for our families? Do you know your family's priorities? Have you written them down? My husband and I, years ago, wrote them down, and we come back to them. Does this fit? No, we said family dinner was a priority. And we have had to make some tough choices to protect that. We have had to say no to many things that the world tells us we absolutely must do. But ladies, I have exchanged nothing for that precious time. I'm all day with my children, but my husband is not. And I take such joy when they are sitting there telling what happened during the day, and I'm thinking, oh, I didn't see it that way. That's really interesting. But it's just fantastic family time. But in order to protect the dinner table, there are many no's that go into that. My husband also very much enjoys spending time with his bride. And so since we're really not, it's not really in the budget to have our weekly date night, we adjusted our world to make it happen at home. So our children know that usually one night a week or so, we have strict bedtimes in our house every night for the most part, but they also know that there are certain nights when we'll say, you guys are gonna go to bed and you're gonna be in bed at 8 and you can have your light on until 8:30, but mom and dad are on this couch and we are talking and it's not your night. So that is our precious time. Now I love it, but here's what happens, right? I think, oh, I have some papers that I could grade, some laundry that I could, the dishes are sitting in the sink. And it has been my sweet husband who just says, no, come sit on the couch with me. Come sit on the couch with me. And I am a better wife for saying no to all of the frazzle and just sitting with him. Tax season is hard on my husband. He's a financial advisor, and so apparently there are some people who don't know that tax season comes every year on April 15th. So on Sunday, you can actually begin planning for next year, right? If you wanted to. But I have learned our home runs better if about the middle of March, I shut it down. I try not to be out of the house of an evening unless it's important. I try not to invite people over for dinner during that time because he has used all of his words at the office. But I love that. I want him to come home and feel peaceful and calm. And I can't do that if I need him to run so-and-so, so-and-so, and pick up this from here and do this and do that. Sometimes those seasons are sustainable, but in our home, we've identified the ones that are not. The other kind of crazy thing I do is at the beginning of every month, I put giant X's on several days on my calendar, and those are sacred. And the script that I have learned is, hey, can you get together on Tuesday? And I look and there's an X. I just say, no, that doesn't work for me. I used to feel like I had to say, because I'm going to the dentist, or I am doing this, but I have learned that simply, that doesn't work for us, is a good enough reason. And those are my catch-up days, and I love them. Those are the days that I can hang out in the yard with my kids, that I talk to our neighbors, that I can catch up on laundry, that I can make you a meal. Those are my days, and what they used to terrify me, like, oh my God, I don't have anything to do. But they're slower days. We almost always, my children now know that we can play board games on those days, so they look forward to them. If you work and you don't have that luxury during the week, try it just for evenings or even Saturdays. Like, sit at the breakfast table with your husband and drink coffee when it's warm. Like, there's sweet moments. But that is the kind of wife I want to be. I want to be a present wife and an available one. And my husband, he's not an interruption, right? Like, he should drive my calendar. And finally, we listen to the voice of God when we slow down. That's the best thing that came out of my hospitalization, was just how quiet my mind got. I sometimes think, how loud would God have to speak for me to hear him in my busy day? Because just like Martha, when I am busy, I don't have the capacity to listen for his voice. And in my experience, his voice will always be still and silent, right? It's a quiet voice. And I used to wonder about that, but he has let me know, and only as he can, I am the God of the universe. I don't have to compete with that. Yeah. Right? So he won't. He will just quietly wait for us to turn our ear to him. His position doesn't change whether I listen to him or not, but mine sure does. Yeah. So what I miss out on, ladies, when I'm busy is simply peace. It's confidence, it's contentment, and it's my most intimate relationship. So my challenge for all of us is to listen. What would God have you say no to or step out of? What might God have you step into if you heard his voice clearly in the quiet? For some of us, I think maybe that means that you work more hours to help your family and trust him to stand in the gap. For some of us, maybe we quit our jobs because our hearts were at home all along. Maybe you coach your kids' soccer team, or maybe you explain to your children that they can't do that extracurricular activity because that actually takes time away from you and Dad. Right? Maybe you start pursuing that dream that you know has been hanging out in your head. Or maybe you can just contentedly journal a little longer until God says move. Right? He's talking to each of us. And the confidence and the peace we get when we hear his voice allows us then to keep doing what we're doing, but to do it better. So our husbands and our children deserve the best of us. And so if you can hear my warning, is that nobody wins when mom is not happy, right? But I would hope in your heart, like what I still hear consistently is Jesus saying, Holly, just come sit with me. Would you just sit for a moment? I can restore your soul in 20 minutes. But would you have none of it? Would you not look at me and just keep at your busy? So my prayer for all of us is just that we would step into his words and know confidently that what we say yes to is absolutely worth it. And what we say no to is worth it as well.
Thanks for watching. For more videos like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow Encourage Squad on Facebook and Instagram.